If you're new to neuroimaging, at some point you'll use what's called a command line interface, or command line for short. This is different from a graphical user interface where you use a mouse to point and click on icons for what you want. With the command line, you have to type out exactly what you want, which may sound tedious, but which in fact can make data analysis much quicker and more flexible. In this series, we'll review the command line you'll be using as a neuroimager, Unix. Specifically, we'll be covering how to use Unix with the command line called terminal that comes with the Macintosh operating system. This is because if you already use a Unix operating system, you probably already know the Unix commands, and because Macintosh computers are widely used in neuroimaging labs around the world. We'll be covering the basic Unix commands you'll need to use AFNI and FSL, software packages that were designed to be run from the command line. Along the way, you'll learn about variables, shell scripting, and the power of loops, which will save you countless hours by automating your analyses. We'll finish the course by showing you how to create and run scripts from the command line to analyze real data with AFNI and FSL. No matter what your background is in command line programming, by the end of this course, you'll be able to write your own scripts, read other people's code, and automate your analyses. So if you're ready, let's get started. The first commands we will cover are pwd, cd, and ls. pwd stands for Print Working Directory, cd stands for Change Directory, and ls stands for List, as in list the contents of the current directory. This is analogous to pointing and clicking on a folder on your desktop, and then seeing what's inside. Note that in these tutorials, the words folder and directory are used interchangeably. The terminal is where we type commands and make things happen. You can open up a terminal by clicking on the spotlight search icon and typing terminal. Click on the first result that appears. Your terminal may not look like mine. You can change the appearance by clicking on Terminal, Preferences, and then change settings such as font type, font size, and background color. You can make the size larger or smaller by holding Command and then typing the plus sign or the minus sign. When you first open up a terminal, the default is to start out in your home folder. Type ls to see what's in here. The command returns a list of all the folders and all the files in that directory. Now type pwd. This returns the absolute path to your current directory, a list of directories containing other directories, going all the way to your current directory. The top of any path, or directory hierarchy, is called the root, symbolized by a /. You can see the same thing by opening up Finder and clicking Go to Folder, and typing /. If you want to move to a different directory, type cd and then the name of the directory. For example, let's navigate to the desktop by typing cd desktop. This is called a relative path, since desktop is a directory within my current working directory. In other words, if the directory shows up when you type ls, you can navigate to it by typing cd and then the name of the directory. Now type ls and see what's there. In this case, there is one folder there named Andy folder. We can make another directory by typing mkdir, short for make directory, and then the name of the directory. Type mkdir, experiment folder, and press enter. And then type ls. It will return the names experiment folder and Andy folder, which are the only things in the desktop directory. And you can see a folder icon on your desktop as well. Now type cd experiment folder to go into that directory, and type ls to see what's inside. This is the same as double-clicking on the experiment folder icon and seeing what's in the Finder. If you want to get out of this folder from the command line, you have two options. One is to type cd followed by the absolute path to the desktop directory, which is tedious. A better option is to use the shortcut cd ... in which ... represents the parent directory, or the directory immediately above the current directory in the path hierarchy. Also be aware that a single dot represents the current directory. In other words, if you typed cd dot, you wouldn't go anywhere. You would stay exactly where you are. This may seem useless, but it can be used in more advanced scripting. Now let's make two more folders, one called experiment directory and one called my folder. Now type cd exp and then press tab. The command line will fill in all of the characters common to both experiment folder and experiment directory. In other words, the command line knows that you must want something starting with the word experiment, but now it can't decide which one to choose. If you provide one more letter, let's say F, and then press tab again, then it knows the experiment folder is the only directory with those characters. Now remove everything from your command line by holding down Control and then pressing U, which will save you the trouble of pressing backspace to delete each character. Let's try one more exercise. Type CD and then M. What do you think happens now if you press tab, and why? Let's finish with another shortcut command, the tilde sign. The tilde sign represents the path to your home directory. If you type cd followed by the tilde sign, it will take you back to your home directory no matter where you are in the path. Alternatively, if you navigate to another directory and then type cd with no file names or data following it, in other words, with no arguments, you will go back to the home directory. What would happen if you typed ls, then the tilde? Why? What about ls tilde/desktop? Although we've covered only 3 commands here, we've covered quite a bit of conceptual ground with Unix. Review these commands and make sure you understand what they stand for and what they do, and then use them for the next 5 or 10 minutes to make sure you feel comfortable with them. Also review these concepts and try to define them in your own words. Now that you have experience with cd and ls, let's expand our repertoire with the commands copy, move, and remove. These are file manipulation commands, analogous to right-clicking on a file and copying and pasting it, renaming it or moving it to a folder, or moving it to the trash bin. The copy and move commands are more complex than the commands in the previous tutorial, since they require 2 inputs, or arguments. We will also use these commands to introduce the concept of options, or flags, which give your commands greater flexibility. Let's begin with the copy and move commands. You can use these with any file on your computer. For this tutorial, however, I recommend that you create a sample text file like this one. Type a few lines in a text editor, make sure it's in plain text mode, and then save it to your desktop as My File. Using the GUI, rename the file like you usually would, and then make a copy. Next, move your files into the directory My Folder. Then go into the directory and remove the files by clicking and dragging them to the trash. Now let's do this from the command line. Open up a terminal and navigate to your desktop directory. You can create files with the touch command, followed by the name of the file. For example, touch myfile.txt. After each command, type ls to see the updated current directory. Note that ls can take a directory as an argument. This can save you time. Instead of navigating to the directory and typing ls without any arguments, which simply returns the contents of the current working directory, you can type ls and then the name of a directory to return its contents. Now type open and then myfile.txt. This will open the file with your default text editor. Type something and save the file. Then type move myfile.txt mynewfile.txt to rename the file. The move command requires 2 arguments. The first argument is the source file, or the file input into the command. The second argument is the target file, or the output of the command. The copy command also requires 2 arguments. To make a copy, type cp, the name of the source file, and then a name for the target file. To move your files into a directory, type mv, the name of each file you want to move, and then the name of the directory. If the last argument is a directory, all of the other inputs will be moved to that directory. To remove the files, cd into the directory, and then type rm, followed by the names of the files that you want to remove. You can specify as many files as you want. Note that in Unix, files that are removed do not go to the trash bin. You can't recover them, so be careful when using this command. Now try this. Go back to the desktop directory, create another text file as before, and then use the cp command to copy the file to my folder, instead of moving it. Here's a hint. The directory will be your target file. Check the contents of both your current directory and your target directory. What if you want to copy or move a directory? Moving directories is similar to moving files. We have a source directory and a target directory, and we can either rename the directory or move it around. For example, if we create a new directory in the desktop directory called Store My Folder, we can use the move command to move my new folder to Store My Folder, and use ls to list the contents of the Store My Folder directory. You can then move that folder back out to the desktop by using this command. Notice, however, that if you want to copy a directory, using the copy command like we did before won't work. You get an error. To use other features of a command, we need to use options, also known as flags. Think of a command as a Swiss Army knife, and options as different tools within it. In this case, we want to copy a directory instead of a file. We will need to use the -r option, which means to recursively copy the directory and all of its contents, including subdirectories if they exist. First, use the touch command to create a file called myfile, and then move it into my new folder. Type cp-r, my new folder, my other folder, and check the contents of each. They should be identical. To remove a directory, we have 2 options. If the directory is empty, you can remove it with rmdir, short for remove directory. If the directory is not empty, you will need to use the -r flag, which recursively removes everything in the directory, including subdirectories. Usually, it's more practical to use rm with the -r option, instead of manually removing everything in the directory. If you want to look up more options for a command, use the man command followed by the command name. You can scroll up and down the instruction manual by using the arrow keys. When you're done, press Q to exit. These new commands will enable you to become more fluent with Unix. By now, you should begin to realize that although it can take some time to learn how to use Unix, it can be quicker than using the GUI. To reinforce the concepts we learned today, try the following exercises. First, make a new directory in your home directory. Call it whatever you like, and either create a couple of new files within that directory or copy files into the directory from another directory. Then, copy your new directory to the desktop. Now copy that same directory to the desktop, but append a / to the end of the directory that you are copying. For example, if the directory is called myfolder, type cp-r myfolder / and then space desktop. What happens? Type mancp and look up the -r option. Are there any other options you think might be useful? In the next video, we will learn about how to manipulate and read text files from the command line. See you then.